Everyone, and welcome to the AmCham's Tech Startup event. My name is Minh. I used to be the editor at Tech in Asia, and now I am a director of communications at Vertex Ventures. I'm also helping out with a lot of different projects in Vietnam, including the Vietnam Angel Network, and I'm even helping 500 startups with their ecosystem building, as well as Dreamplex, and several other projects in Vietnam that are focused on bringing the startup ecosystem to the next level. So Rick was nice enough to invite all of us back again this year, and I'm very happy. I'm sad that I won't be able to make it, but I'm humbled that Rick thought my speech last year was good enough that we can have a repeat. So my thesis today will be to kind of look at what it was like last year and what it's going to be like this year, and potentially what it will be like in 2017. I think that it might be much better. And to understand that, I think that we first need to take a look at last year. Now, last year, my point was that Vietnam was in the midst of a scissoring situation. And the case, to me, was that Vietnam startups, especially the early stage startups, were not very skilled. They didn't have a lot of experience. They were starting up too soon. And the macroeconomic environment, depending on which market that the startup was attacking, was also not very good. And a lot of startups were failing, and as well as a lot of startups were stuck in not being able to understand their target audience very well, their market very well, or understand leadership, or understand how to build a product. So a lot of issues that, to me, are systemic and related to education. At the same time, we see that maybe there's no roadmap for gaining and getting continual investment in a startup. A lot of guys were early stage, but they don't know what the path is to M&A or exit or whatever it is. And that puts a lot of startups in an almost zombie state. Despite this, there has been some investment, right? And lastly, the beauty of Vietnam is that it is mature and technically strong. The ecosystem is at least 10 years old. And so you got this scissoring situation between the roadmap of investment and the weakness of the startups, but at least there's this caveat where Vietnam is a little more mature in experience and is technologically strong, and arguably one of the strongest technically in the region. So I think that's the kind of predicament that we find Vietnam in. And I think a lot of these trends are still true, like startups are still weak, but there are three major themes that I see now in 2016 that will come to define Vietnam in the next year or so, in contrast to last year. And it is that, number one, people are starting to work together in a way that we haven't seen before, I think. People are much more willing. There's a little more money in the ecosystem to do practical things, and those practical things are uniting people. So, for example, the whole initiative around angel investment these days is a lot of different players, from the government all the way down to smaller organizations like Hatch, are getting involved in encouraging angel investment. This is a big shift, right? And although it does not have a lot of exits and M&As, which trickles down into the younger startups, it is almost like I could say that the ecosystem is like the veins, and the exits and the mentors are like the blood. And so at least Vietnam is starting to build up the blood, right? And we have a little bit of mentorship and a little bit of successful people here and there that can contribute back. But without the veins, then there's not enough transparency and connection. And I think transparency may be a major theme this year. I also think there's renewed foreign interest. And you could argue that Vietnam has had strong foreign interest for quite a while now, with Japanese and rising interest from Koreans, and obviously the VQ and American interest has always been there. But I think now it's taking a more serious look. And I think the biggest evidence for that would be the outliers that we see out of this, which I would consider to be like Momo and Got It. Momo recently raising $28 million from Standard Chartered and Goldman Sachs. Quite a big investment for mobile payments company in Vietnam. And then you've got It, which is based in the Valley and in Hanoi, but very successful as well to raise likely around $10 to $15 million. So Vietnam it's got these outliers because it's leveraging on things that I talked about last year, including the connection with America, the strong technical talent, and the maturity. And I think this will continue to play out in the new year. And who knows what will happen in 2017, but I believe that it's going to continue. I mean, consider that in 2014 we had about 26 investments, give or take. And then last year it was up to about 67 recorded investments from seed all the way up to Series A, Series B stages. And then this year we have even companies like VNG investing in Tiki.vn. So, and that's, I believe that's a $10 million deal. So I think that shows that Vietnam has been slowly and steadily moving upwards. My theory is that that has always been the trend for Vietnam. I wonder also if in 2016 we are seeing the beginnings of more policy development and engagement from the ministries at a much more serious level, especially the Deputy Prime Minister meeting with angel investors and startups to find out where they should go. And I think this may be a good direction from a macro perspective. And where must it all go? I mean, either way, whether or not the macroeconomics or the policy or even deals on American companies getting into Vietnam, I think we will see either way more and more innovation, because it just happens to be that Vietnam is positioned uniquely compared to, let's say, Thailand or Singapore or even Malaysia and Indonesia, in the sense that it can leverage this technical talent forever, so to speak. And this will pay off in dividends. And now that you see other elements of the ecosystem getting interested in investing into tech, that may be that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. But of course, in Vietnam, you have to taper your sense of hope with a little bit of cynicism and skepticism. So I think it's not that you can see the end of the tunnel, but that there's a little light in there. And I think that we can look forward to some pretty interesting things and announcements in the next few years. So that's all from me. I think I'm over time. I'm sorry, Rick, but I had 5 slides, and I think that's quite all right. So I hope that's good for everybody on an overview on what's happening in the ecosystem, and I welcome any questions that you have, and just email me, and thanks a lot. So I hope you guys enjoy the panel, and I'll miss all of the fellow panelists this year, but I'll invite all you guys out for coffee next time. So goodbye.